Okay, good morning, Penny.
Good
Hello,
morning,
hello.
Pam.
So today I'm so excited to talk with Penny Wilson, who lives in Michigan. And what I'm going to be doing is spotlighting her, meaning I'm going to be asking her some questions about her journey of becoming an equine assisted coach. And so Penny was a student back in spring of last year, 2018. So I'm going to bring her into the spotlight today, and I'm going to ask her some questions again about her experience and how she created things in her life. And I'm going to let her share her story with you so it gives you an idea of you never know what's going to fall into your world, so to say. So, okay. So, welcome, Penny. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you, Pam.
Yeah, and thanks for saying yes to doing this. So, I know a lot of people sometimes are a little bit hesitant because they're have some kind of fear even standing on stage and, talking, being asked questions. But thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
So, I've got a couple questions here, and I'd like to be more informal than formal because I feel that, I want to make that connection for the people too. So, I remember last year you said you were going to register, and I think you said there were only 3 spots left. So if you can tell me a little bit more about that, in other words, what was going on in your world that brought you to register to become an equine assisted coach?
Okay, so it's kind of a long story, so I'll try and modify it a bit. But I had worked in the automotive industry for 30 years, and my most recent position was being director of finance for a $1 billion division within our company. Our company was purchased in April of 17 by another company, and it just created a lot of turmoil and additional work in that. And I'd had this dream in my heart for a long time to do something with horses to help people, because my cousin had done equine therapy, a riding therapeutic, because she has something very similar to, I think it's cerebral palsy. And so watching her on the horses when she was a teenager was very impactful for me to see her joy. And so this is something that's always been there. So after our company was acquired, the expectations for my position grew. I was responsible for 28 global locations from a finance perspective. And so there was a lot of early morning meetings at 6 o'clock to catch the Asian teams before they went home, and there was to catch the European teams before they got too far into their day, and then we would turn around and do calls at night at 9 o'clock. My life was basically 24/7 work, and so by October of 17, I had reached a point where I was breaking. I couldn't do the 80 hours a week in 6 days, because on the seventh day I was helping my dad because my mom had a stroke 3 years ago. And so I had to take one day a week to help them. So it was like this perfect storm. And it just got to a point where I decided that I needed to do something different. And so I just up and quit my job. I gave them 6 months notice because who I am as an individual wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of. So in that 6 months, I figured they could get my replacement, I could train them, and then I could figure out what to do. So I quit at the end of October. By December, I had stumbled across your program and a couple other equine assisted programs that were very interesting to me. And so I reached out and I got information from you and from other programs. And then it kind of sat because we rolled into January. It's beginning of the year. Everything was really busy and I got consumed with work again. And then I received an email from you. My last day of work was the end of April, so April 30th of 18. I received an email from you at the beginning of April saying, hey, there's 3 more spots left open in our program. We'd like to have you. And I read the email and I sat on it for a week and thought, I don't really know what equine assisted coaching means, but it's interesting. And I was panicking because I'm the personality that says I have to have something to do when I'm done with something. So I knew May 1st was coming. April 30th, my life as I knew it was ending. May 1st was something new. I didn't have something to move into. So I talked to a friend of mine and she said, "What are you waiting for?" She goes, "Whether you understand the program or not, it's something to do, do it." And so with her encouragement and some thoughtful prayer, I decided to jump in head first without fully understanding what equine assisted coaching was. But I have to tell you, it was the best decision I made.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, so you followed, would you say you followed like an inner voice or inner gut feeling or?
Absolutely. It was just this feeling inside that said, there you've nothing to lose, try it. And it just, I felt like I was being tugged toward it. And I don't know how to explain it other than it was within me saying I had to do it. So
Yeah.
I firmly believe that your email came at the right time. And I'm a firm believer everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just have to keep our minds open and receptive to what comes along our path and be willing to take a risk or a leap of faith.
Yeah. Yeah, taking that risk, that leap of faith is definitely, yeah, something that a lot of people don't understand. So, but you definitely got out of your comfort zone
Oh,
and
completely.
you walked that line, I don't know. So when you were stepping into that fear, so to say, in other words, you jumped into the arena, what kind of fears would you say that you were experiencing or having?
So the types of fears I was having was stepping into an unknown. For so many years, I had been performing a finance role that I felt very comfortable with. And despite the challenges and the stress levels that come along with that job, it was comfortable. And so I was going from being comfortable to what do I do with myself now? Where do I spend my time? How do I take care of medical insurance? How, all of these new things that I hadn't processed until that first day that I was done. And so for me, I've never really been good at being vulnerable, but I am now because Pam helped me with that. And so my fears were just, what am I doing? Where am I going? Is this something that I can make into a business? Because my mind raced so much because we had been so consumed for so many years with being in charge of so many people and so much, from a finance perspective. At one point, I had IT responsibility, HR responsibility, and finance responsibility for this $1 billion division. And so having that false sense of control gave me this sense that I could accomplish anything. So moving from that to I'm not sure what tomorrow brings, brought a lot of anxiety and fear of saying, how do I get myself back into control? But now that I've gone through the process, I don't need that control.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very healthy change for me.
Great. Yeah. So in answering, expounding on what you just said, you learned about vulnerability and overcoming, working with the fear and the anxiety and the self-doubt. So what would you say you learned about yourself in that process?
What I learned about myself is that it's okay to have these feelings because our bodies have these emotions, the anxiety, the self-doubt, because it's trying to tell us something. And once we settle into the fact that our body is really trying to tell us something that we just need to work through, for me, taking each day is very simple now because if I get anxiety, if I get self-doubts, it's a matter of taking a step back and thinking through it. Where before I would just plow through it because that was the easy way. If I just plowed through everything, it didn't matter what the end result was as long as I was managed to get through that fear. Today, I want to process the fear and understand it. And then, because whatever I experience, I help people that are experiencing the same fears and emotions because I can't be effective in helping others if I don't experience what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Great. And would you say you, we talk about control because a lot of times we want control, but when we're in the control phase, 100% of the time, 95% of the time, I think what happens is we push aside, we don't allow creativity to come in. So in other words, we're replacing our creativity with control. And when we're in control, we don't allow things to come onto our doorsteps or the opportunities to show up in our world. So would you say that was part of your world until you started to step into more of the creative arena?
Yes, I would agree. Brene Brown has a very good comment where she says people that want to have control are really trying to predict the outcome. And so when you want to have control, you're trying to say, okay, I've got everything so I can predict the outcome of this situation. And so you're absolutely correct. When I was in control mode, I wasn't letting other things come in from a creativity perspective, because I had to be able to manage every facet and to ensure that it was getting the outcome I wanted. Today, going through the Equine assisted coaching program, that creativity is so important for what we do, is because you have to be willing and receptive to to use your intuition, to really to think outside the box. Being in finance, it's a black and white environment. Coaching is not black and white. It's a gray area because you have to be more receptive, because not everyone is going to look at things the same way you do. And so being able to think outside the box and to glean upon other things as you're working with people, or even in life in general, is very important. I found that to be very true as I was working with my first client. There would be days where I wanted it to be prescribed, but when they got to the barn, it didn't work out that way. And so I would leave thinking I was failing because it wasn't in my prescribed method. But then they would come back the next week and tell me how great that session was. And so for me, that was the door that opened for me to really understand my expectations aren't someone else's expectations. So just get creative. Go with your gut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up some really good points. Yeah. So I'd like to talk about your horses and then your experience with an event that was held at your church. So let's start with your horses and
Okay.
what are their names, and if you could give me just a little bit of background history on your horses.
Sure. Sure. So my first horse that I've had over the last couple of years, his name is Preston. He's a Tennessee Walker, a typical redhead. So no offense to anyone that has red hair, but he's typical redhead. He's a great horse. He likes to intimidate people, and so he likes to push me around. But I think that's one of the reasons why we get along so well. I ended up joining up with Preston because he was a spare horse at a barn that I found out about through a friend, and then they decided they weren't going to keep him. I was looking for a horse, so they wanted to know if I would lease him. And so I said, sure. So I leased him for about 15 months, and then I owned him, become his owner. Prior to that, he had been through a couple of owners where they would just let him sit in the pasture field, or when they would ride him, they would let him do whatever he wanted to. So that's kind of where this intimidation came from with him, because he didn't listen. As he and I have developed our relationship better, we actually have this trust. When I walk out to the barn, he literally will run up to me, he'll nicker at me, and then he'll put his head down, and it's like we just love being with each other. And so it's kind of cool watching this difference in this horse from where he was to where he is today. Mm-hmm. So he's the one that I do trail riding with and I spend a lot of time with. My next two horses, I have three. So my other two horses were actually donated to me by a young lady who was a nurse assistant at my mom's nursing home. She used to barrel race April, who's a quarter horse, when she was in high school and was very successful at it in the state of Michigan. But then when she went to college, she stopped barrel racing. And so her mom said, well, we need to get rid of the horses because you're not at home anymore. So we need to sell them. And so Morgan had reached out to me and said, I'd really like to help you start your business with the equine coaching. So would you be willing to take my horses? So April was one. Trooper's the other one, and Trooper was a mounted patrol horse. Her family had obtained him after he had spent his 10 years in service. And so he was basically just a horse for her sister that they rode around the pasture field, but he worked in southern Michigan at a couple of the different police or the sheriff's departments. So used for crowd control, things of that nature.
Yeah, interesting backgrounds. Yeah, where they came from.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I'd like to do, Penny, is I'm going to read a couple paragraphs, something that you had sent to me. And when I read this, it was, wow. It's like, I have never heard of your, is it your minister?
Yeah, our pastor, yeah.
Your pastor that invited you and your horses to come to church on Easter Day, Easter Day. And when I heard that, it's not, let's say, typical. Have someone ask you to do that. So I would like to read here and share with the viewers your experience, and also, like you were talking about earlier, how the doors started to open up for you because you're doing the work and you're working through any fears and self-doubts, you know, because like I say, opportunities are on the other side of risk. You know, the opportunities are just waiting for us. And so you are involved with your church, and you've got some connections there. And so you started sharing about your journey of becoming an equine assisted coach.
I did, yes.
Yeah. So I would like to read this, and then I'd like to talk about it a little bit. So this is what you wrote. God will open some amazing doors if you are looking, and I see this event on Easter as one of those unforeseen opportunities. When my pastor told me that he was aware of my new adventure and wondered if I wanted to bring the horses to Easter services, I was clearly amazed. Apparently, my new path came up in a discussion he had with the father of one of the young ladies in my Tuesday night small group. I have been sharing with my women's group the way in which the horses help people, and I have invented a few of the, I have invited a few of the ladies to come and spend time with me and the horses. Melissa's dad called this my new ministry of helping people. So, yeah, wow. And the ladies, I have been sharing with my women's group the way in which the horses help people. And so then invited a few of the ladies to come and spend some time with me and the horses. So did these ladies then come to your barn?
So one of the ladies did come to my barn, come out to the barn and spend some time with me and the horses. So we've done one so far. There's a couple others that are facing some challenges that they said we really truly do want to come out. So we're setting up time for them to come out. And in fact, the ladies actually asked if we could do one of our Tuesday night study sessions sitting in the pasture field with the horses. Because they all met the horses at Easter on Easter Sunday. So they all came out and met the horses then. And they said, I think they were a little apprehensive at first until they actually met them. And April and Trooper did an amazing job when they were there at Easter. And we can talk about that a little bit. But when the ladies realized how calm and receptive they were, they just said, all right, we have to do at least one night out at the barn so we
Yeah.
can do our group discussion there.
Yeah. And these are ladies that have absolutely no horse experience.
That is correct. That is
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
My women's group is, what's interesting about my women's group is the age. The youngest is 18, the oldest is 68. And so there's this group of 18 women that are all these different ages, all different economic backgrounds and careers and all of that. And none of them have horse experience whatsoever, but they are just being drawn to come out to the barn, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah. 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 So there we were talking about the opportunities, and right here, yeah, you've got this group of women now that are showing an interest. And so right there, that's how it works.
Right.
Yeah. You get
Yep.
involved with your community. So um I'm gonna get one more paragraph here I'd like to read, and then I've got some pictures that I'd like to show. And so you go on to say, I have attached a couple of pictures of the horses from the day. They did so well with all of the chaos, loud music for the kids' Easter egg hunt,
Mm-hmm.
a bullhorn giving instructions, lots of kids and adults, other animals for a petting farm, etc. Watching them interact with the little kids and the various adults was truly amazing. One of the ladies from my small group had offered to come and help me, which was a blessing in more than one way. It helped having another person to be with the horses, and Heidi was able to experience what the horses do. In fact, she shared with everyone from our small group that came up to meet the horses what she was experiencing with them. I was also able to pass out several business cards with a couple of potential leads. Whether or not the leads pay off is not the point. I am so glad we did this because it helps educate people about new opportunities for help. So, so if you could share a little bit about that experience, and before we do that, I'm going to show pictures. I hope people can see these. Hello, can you see that, Penny?
Yep, I can see that.
Okay. So, and you said this is April?
That's April. Uh-huh.
April, and that's you with April.
That's me with April. Yep.
Okay, and you're at the church.
Yep. We're
You're at the
we're
church.
at the church. Yep. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can see what I put up for the horses there were just these posts that you step into the ground with a white tape around it. That was all those horses need to stay where they were.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this one is Heidi.
That's Heidi. Yep. She
The
was brushing April, and Trooper is right next to April.
Okay. And
Yep.
then Heidi, you had mentioned in your paragraph that Heidi, she was sharing with the other people how the horses were, how she was interacting with the horses, and how evidently they were helping her.
Yes. Yeah. So we did like a mini coaching session with Heidi when services were going on because no one was outside. And so I used this as an opportunity to share with Heidi how it worked with the horses. And she was just blown away. She said, I had no idea. And she said that within a few minutes, as she just started being around the horses, she became calm and we had some great conversations. And in fact, Heidi's one that is a little reserved. And when people would come up, she was sharing stories about the horses with the people. And so she was more outgoing and more comfortable. And it was interesting to watch her come from being a little concerned about being around the horses to standing there with Trooper and telling people his story and talking about what the horses did for her. And in just that small period of that window that she had that morning.
Yeah. So you helped her work through some fears, and you helped
Right.
her believe in herself. And
Yep.
yeah, and it was evident that she was connecting more with her true essence, it sounds like, because she was
Yes.
excited in a way to even share with others.
Oh, she was talking to everybody. I was amazed. There were points where we both were talking to different groups of people because there were so many people coming up and wanting to talk about what I do with the horses and that. So it was nice from the perspective to have that time with her before, to go through a mini coaching session before people started coming. And so it was really nice to watch her just blossom that day.
Yeah. And what would you say in regard to how the horses were? In other words, what was their behavior like? what was their expression like, because they were at a different environment
Mm-hmm.
being at church as opposed to
Right.
being at home.
Right.
And one of your horses was back at home yet. So even
Right.
being separated. So if you could share a little bit about what did you see in the horses on that day?
Oh, sure, sure. So I took just April and Trooper. I have a 2-horse trailer, so and my redhead Preston is a little too anxious to be around that many people, so I brought the other two. And I think, as you and I had talked, Trooper, being a mounted patrol horse, was very calm and was okay with being in that environment because of his experience prior to that. April, I wasn't sure how she would do because sometimes she can get a little anxious in that. Um, but ironically enough, or maybe not ironic, but just it happened that she was very calm. And as people would come up, she would lower her head low enough so that little kids who were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old could come up and they'd pet her. She'd put her head down. Very sweet. And she was very respectful. Trooper was busy eating and doing whatever, and in fact, interfacing with people. And then after the first crowd would go away, April would yawn a couple of times, and then she it's like she was centering herself again. And then another group of people would come up, and so I was really pleasantly surprised how well April did. Trooper didn't really surprise me because he's my steady Eddie. He's 31, so he's got a lot of years of experience. April's 21. But yeah, I was just so pleased with how well they both did. And the fact that they just had a white tape to hold them into their little pasture area, to me was amazing. And I didn't really hold them. We just had the lead ropes over their backs and just stood there with them. And yeah, so the loud music, the bullhorn, and all these little kids running around trying to find their Easter eggs and parents, and uh, they did really, really well. And
Yeah.
for me, watching them release that energy, as after each throng of people would come through, for me, it helped me understand better too how they help release some of the anxiety they're feeling from their
Sure.
own experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about that in the training too.
Mhm.
Yeah, why the horses do that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and when I got them home, the first thing they did was they took off running, and they ran and they ran and they ran, and then they came back, and April got down and she rolled, and
ah,
so they were truly back to being horses. But in
yeah.
the moment when they were at church, because they were there, I got there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we left at 1:30, so
Yeah.
it was a long day for them.
Yeah. Wouldn't
So
that be funny, like if we did the same thing, if we got home and we ran and ran and then we rolled on the ground? We don't do that, we do it in our
no,
own way, but yeah,
right,
but they
right.
definitely know how to take care of themselves too.
Yeah. Yeah. We were invited. I was invited to take him on Saturday as well, but Saturday it rained and it was windy. So I left him home. I didn't want to subject him to the weather.
Yeah,
Uh, so they could have been there both days, but I think Sunday turned out to be such a really neat experience for me, for them, and for the people. In fact,
yeah,
my pastor invited me to bring him back. He said, "Would you bring him back for another event that we have later in the summer?" And I said, "Well, if it works out, I would
yeah.
definitely."
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit too about community, because becoming an equine assisted coach, when you enroll in this program, then you become part of a community of other equine assisted
Mhm.
coaches. And during the training, you're part of a coaching buddy system where you
Mhm.
get together with other coaches, equine assisted coaches, on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis. And what would you say was your big takeaway from that?
So my big takeaway from the weekly calls was initially you have conversations with people and you have preconceived ideas on who everyone is based upon their performance or their behaviors on these calls. And so I know walking into the 4-day training session at your barn there, I had an idea of who everybody was, but within the first 2 hours, all of those ideas and preconceived ideas had gone away because I really got to know the people. And so I really like the weekly calls. There's a lot of really good information, and we talk about a lot of different things. And The books that you had us read were really good. But for me, the biggest benefit was the 4-day hands-on training, where you were able to connect more with the people in your community. I actually stayed in a vacation rental by owner with 3 other individuals I didn't even know. Again, this is another one of those things where I just felt like I needed to do it. You had posted on the Facebook page that Marvin had rented this house and there were spots available. So I reached out and said, I don't know you guys very well, but if you've got a spot, I'll stay with you. And that was one of those very impactful parts of the training as well, because I got to know these guys so much better because we were together from sun up to sundown and had great conversations at the house and talked about what we learned during the day. And so that community is very important, of being able to know these people and get to, because you learn from each other. You give us a lot of information, and what we did there with you is amazing. But then you get to take the experience from someone who's learning it at the same time you are and understanding from their perspective. And so that's helpful.
Right. And you also made a couple friends that you're still in contact with. Is that correct? In fact, one friend is overseas.
Yes, in fact, that is true. That is true. My coaching buddy calls, which we did off from the weekly calls with you, was with my friend Eska, who is my friend. I will call her my friend Eska. She's from South Africa. And then Patty, who is in Virginia. We still stay in touch as well. And then Heidi's part of our group as well. So we're now down to doing our coaching buddy calls once a month. Everybody calls in when they can. But yeah, Eska and I have separate conversations when we want to bounce ideas off from each other. And that. I just believe all of this whole journey has been pre-planned, not by me, and other than I needed to meet Eska. I needed to be part of your program. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy Eska. And then I'm also friends with Gina, who lives in Atlanta. In fact, I went and stayed with Gina in January when I went down to do a 3-day intensive life coaching course. So, and Gina and I talk at least once a week, bounce ideas off from each other, and just to stay friends, which I think has been very beneficial for me also.
Yeah. And isn't it really cool or amazing, however you want to call it, how the horses are bringing us all together in connection?
Absolutely.
Now more than ever, we're having to look at life and connecting together in an authentic, vulnerable way, as opposed to just doing things at a like we connect online and things like that. But when you get in touch with somebody else and you have like similar interests, number one being the horse,
right?
It just opens up so many more doors than one would ever even expect.
Right.
And that's the beauty. That's the unforeseen, like you said in your writing. That's the unforeseen opportunities that where you don't control everything, that you allow what wants to show up, to come into your world. So,
right.
Yeah, and this is where the horses. I always have said, horses helped us long time ago over the years, with our survival needs. And now they're helping us again on a
absolutely
level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I actually, I hadn't shared this with you yet because it just happened this week. I had donated a 90-minute coaching session to a charity auction for a friend of mine. Her daughter, they're trying to raise money for the kids to go sing at Carnegie Hall in New York. And so I thought, well, what a great opportunity. I can get at least some advertisement out, free advertisement, put this as for the auction. And so a gentleman called me last Friday and said, told me his name, and said he won the coaching session. And so I called him back this week and said, and we talked a little bit about the coaching and things of that nature. And I said, is the coaching session for you or for someone else? Because he sounded a little bit older. And he said, oh no, the session's for me. And I said, well, do you have any expectations about what the coaching is or that? And he said, no expectations. It has to deal with horses and I'm all in. So he bought the session because it would give an opportunity to interface with the horses. And he's driving from Ypsilanti, which is a good 45 minutes to come out to the. Yeah. So you just never know where these contacts are going to come.
No, you don't.
No. And I joined the Chamber of Commerce 2 weeks ago. And so I joined a referral group. And yesterday I got to explain what I was doing and everyone was really interested. And it's just interesting how all the conversations are becoming easier.
Yeah.
When I went through the business essentials course with you, I had a hard time of explaining what it is I wanted to do and who I wanted to go after and all of that.
Yeah.
And it just seems like the more I do this, the easier it becomes. And I've been told on multiple occasions that when I talk about it, I light up. And so people are getting that passion through me as I get more comfortable in talking about this amazing thing that we do.
Yeah. 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 That is a great journey. And you learn as you go. That's
Absolutely.
Human beings. We learn as we go. So wonderful. Wonderful, Penny. Well, is there anything you'd like to share? Anything that is a big overall takeaway? Any little breadcrumbs that you can share for people to follow before we close out?
Sure. First, I wouldn't recommend anyone do what I do and wait till the last minute and jump in head first without knowing what you're doing. That obviously is not for the faint of heart, but this program has done amazing things for me. What it has done for me is it helped me to really look inside and realize who my authentic self is and be comfortable with my authentic self. Because when I'm being authentic, then I'm more of a help to others. I think for me, I've experienced a lot of things through my life that I've always compartmentalized and tried to keep aside. So I didn't want to appear vulnerable. I didn't want to appear weak or whatever. But it's in our weakness that we become strong and that we can help others. And so being vulnerable is really important. And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of being vulnerable, because the one thing I've learned from my horses is they know what I'm thinking on the inside before I do, because they see the real me. They don't see the person I'm trying to project or the mask that I'm wearing. So I think for people that want to do this, or people that are already doing it, just be yourself, be comfortable with who you are. Lean on your horses, because that's what they're there for. They want to please us and they want to do what's right and help people also. So I want to thank you, Pam, because had I not jumped in head first, I don't think that I would have made that step, but you've really helped me on this journey. So the last year has been mind-boggling, but it's been also life-changing. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And it's been an honor, Penny, getting to know you, and we stay connected here and there. And that's what's great about, we belong to a community of equine assisted coaches, and we all support each other. And
absolutely.
Like you said, we bring in each other's gifts and you listen to each other, and then you get ideas and inspiration. And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
It's about connection.
Yeah, you can't do life on your own. I thought I could for the longest time, but that was a weakness. And for me, that was having so many walls built around me that said, I'm not letting people in because I could get hurt. But at the end of the day, you need others. We were created to be in community. And so the community is really important. And so that's why I enjoy doing our coaching buddy calls still. I enjoy being able to talk to Eska, even though she's 8 hours ahead. We do it. We have our call in the afternoon so she can do it at night. She's an amazing lady. I'm so thankful that you connected her with us. And just the people in our group has been amazing. It felt like it was handpicked for everybody to be at that session. That we had. So,
That's great. So may you continue on your beautiful journey.
Oh, thank you.
partnering with horses and helping clients through their transformation. It's really truly been an honor,
Oh,
Penny,
thank you.
and I look forward to connecting with you soon. So
Oh, absolutely. Thank you again for everything.
thanks. So okay, we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Pam.
Thanks.